be learning, so bear with me, because I don't know much about this, but I think it's just absolutely miraculous what's happened and the whole phenomenon. And that you're taking such an interest in it really alerts me to the fact that there's something very important there, because you never take interest in anything that isn't really important. And in a timely fashion, if I may say so. But, and Rosario, welcome very much to Conversation. It's a great pleasure. And I would say to our audience, welcome very much to Conversations, where we're having a program today with an old friend of Conversations, that being on my immediate left, Nita Renfrew. And she's up on the bill here as a Reiki healer and teacher. And we're going to be talking about that with her and with a beneficiary of her training, Dr. Rosario Garcia. And Rosario, welcome very much to Conversations. I might say we'll give you a chance to spell it out, but you're from Ecuador, and you are a member of the national legislation. You're a constitutional lawyer. Maybe she could introduce herself a little bit in terms of her background, and then we'll come and talk to you. But maybe you could translate, because she is not versed in English.
Que digas un poco quién eres y un poco tu historia.
Mi nombre es Rosario García. Soy doctora en jurisprudencia, abogada. Trabajo en asesoría jurídica del Congreso Nacional de Ecuador. Trabajo ahí 26 años.
Could you translate for us?
She's a doctor in jurisprudence, and she works for the National Assembly of Ecuador. She's been there for 27 years.
She's an abogado.
Yes.
A lawyer.
Yes.
And then she's
a doctor in jurisprudence.
She's going to share with us, she's had a recent bout with cancer.
Dice que vas a compartir con nosotros un poquito de datos de tu
enfermedad.
Sí, tu enfermedad reciente con el de cáncer
And has been cured.
Y que te has curado completamente.
Sí, gracias a Dios.
Qué bueno. Muchísimas gracias a ti also. Okay. Anyways, welcome very much. And the immediate left is Nita Renfrew, who needs no introduction to anyone who watches Conversations. I think she's been the most frequent guest of Conversation over the decades of anyone. And Nita, it's so good to see you once again, and to talk about this Reiki that you've become so interested in. But Nita will be recognized by people in the audience as having been perhaps the leading person within the world community, I would say, who was able to bring shine a light of a certain understanding, countercultural or whatever you'd want to term it, in terms of Iraq, the country of Iraq, and the person of Saddam Hussein. She was all over the news sources back in '91, and she has been definitively writing and talking about that. We talked about that very often in the past. We're probably going to be rerunning interviews or program conversations we had with her on that subject. That's still very much in the world consciousness. But now she has, and I'm going to ask her to sort of share with us, turned her attention over the last year, 2, 3, something like that?
No, it's been almost 5 years now.
Oh, has it been that long? Okay, to this phenomena of Reiki. And Nita, maybe you could welcome, as always, to Conversations. We'll put aside Saddam Hussein for another occasion, or one that we've taped in the past, and tell us about when you became interested. First of all, maybe introduce to the audience what this Reiki is, and bring us up to date in terms of when you became interested, and fill it in historically, and then we'll want to talk about Rosario's situation, which you were a practitioner and helped her with the situation she was in with great result. But could you share it with the audience, Reiki?
Yeah. What I want to say is, I used to do political reporting, and that was, I used to talk a lot about Iraq here and so on.
Reporting.
But I think I burned myself out, because I kept coming up with these terrible, terrible things that were going on in the world and with our government and so on. And I just sort of, I burned myself out.
Yeah, I think a lot have.
And then at a certain point, everything just fell apart in my life. And I realize now that that happens when you deplete your energy. And it happens because we live in a world of subtle energies. It's not just this material world that we're looking at.
Have you thought about that subtle energy question for a long time?
I have thought about it for a long time. And I had taken classes in healing years ago and so on, and I'd always wanted to. I'd always been intrigued by healers who could work with subtle energies and so on. And I thought, I remember when I was a child, there was this neighbor, he was an older boy, and he could take away people's headaches by putting his hands on their head. And I just thought that was amazing. And I thought,
it is, and it does happen.
If I could do that, I thought, you know, he must have some really special powers and so on to do this. And I took classes in healing, and of course I could do things in the class and a few weeks later, but then it would just sort of go away. So some 5 years ago, I just burned myself out, and everything in my life fell to pieces. And
about 2001, just after the new millennium dawned.
With the millennium, it just,
the new millennium,
it just went, you know, like,
I mean, a lot of people.
Y25, I mean, it
right.
didn't hit the world, but it hit me.
And I want to thank you for all that sterling political reporting and reading of things on a world scale, and you've still got all that there in the cranium and in the Akashic record inside your head, and I thank you for that. But this thing,
well, I think we've gone into a new era, just in, you know, as far as human beings are concerned. I think that the era of using words and so on to transform situations and demonstrating in the streets and so on it's passé. It's gone.
You do.
You know, it's like the horse and cart as opposed to a jet. And I think that we've come into a new age where really the learning how to maneuver in the world of energy is, and it's not just hydrogen energy, fuel cells for cars. It's the whole world of energy where we can actually change the quality of our inner life, of our outer life. We can actually affect other people with our hands. We can be instruments of healing. We can channel healing energy. Is the new world, and we're just on the tip of the iceberg. So we're just learning how to starting to learn how to use this.
That's really what, when you say we, are we talking about in the West?
I'm talking about in the world.
No,
yes, I know.
Been there for a long time.
But in the past, it was always special people with who were considered to have special powers.
Jesus could heal.
Yeah, who could do this. And now what's happening is that everybody is able to do this. And, you know, I look at myself. I'm not anybody who had any special powers in my life. I was never able to relieve someone's headache with my hands.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, that laying on of hands is a thing that's but that's been around for quite a while, hasn't it?
But it hasn't
over
been,
the ages?
Yes. Oh, of course it has.
Yeah,
but it was always special people who could do it.
Yeah.
It wasn't just everybody, every Joe Smith on the street who could do it.
Well.
Now what's happening is that, and I think it's because there's a morphic resonance field that's opening
Rupert
up.
Sheldrake.
Rupert Sheldrake.
Rupert Sheldrake is out of sight. He's really interesting. That's the 1,000 monkeys.
I believe that that Reiki, which is this Japanese practice that I do, I believe that Dr. Usui, who basically created Reiki, or the system of Reiki back in the 1920s.
1920s.
I believe that he actually created the beginning of a morphic field in healing.
A morphic field.
A morphic field.
Oh, if I may, with Rupert Sheldrake,
Yeah.
It's a monkey will learn something in Madagascar, and with no telegraph lines or anything of that sort, the monkeys in Australia, far across the ocean, will pick it up, and there's a resonancy or a communication going on.
And
he did it
with pigeons. He did an experiment with pigeons in England, I believe it was, and they would learn to open up milk cartons.
That's right. Yeah.
And then he found that when they started learning how to do that in one part of the country, they would, within a certain period of time, they would start to do it in another place, maybe France or something, and there was no way that these birds could possibly have traveled that far to teach the other birds.
Yeah, talking about advanced communications that has been there within the structure of consciousness writ large all along. Some people have picked up on that.
And crossword puzzles. He also did an experiment where he found that, you know, when the crossword puzzle would come out in the morning in the paper, people would start to solve it. But by the end of the day, when a certain number of, when there was a critical mass of people who had solved the crossword puzzle, everybody who tried to do it afterwards would do it much faster.
Really?
Yeah.
And that's all documented scientifically?
That's all documented.
Because he had a scientific...
He's a major scientist.
He's an amazing person. He's England. He's from England.
Well,
and
I believe that Reiki, which is a healing art, it's an energy, hands-on, but also you can do it without, you know, because you can actually touch somebody through their energy field without putting your hand on them physically. And you can do Reiki at a distance too, because we're talking about non-locality, which is in quantum physics and so on.
That's right. And you're getting this fellow Tiller, you told me about
William
him.
Tiller.
Yeah, he's fantastic. What scientific credentials in
Yes,
quantum mechanics, and he's coming and saying these things that seem to the Western skeptical scientific mind to be beyond the Wizard of Oz thing, but that it's very real and accords with things at a molecular level in nature's pattern, and that there's really something there.
William Tiller is a physicist, and he was the head of the material engineering department at Stanford University.
At Stanford, no less, yeah.
But back in the, parallel to his mainstream sort of working on weapons systems and everything else, back in, I guess, around 30 years ago, he became a healer himself, an energy healer.
30 years ago, yeah.
I think in around 1970.
He
didn't do Reiki, but he did something related.
Mm-hmm.
And he began studying acupuncture and these other, and meditation and so on. And so that he began to measure these things and do experiments. And he's, by the way, he's proposing a whole new physics now based on this.
Yeah, right. And he's got great credentials.
And what he says is that when you're working with an energy with your hands doing energy healing, what you're doing is you're working with the electromagnetic fields, your own and that of the other person. And you're actually balancing these electromagnetic fields. And he's saying that in the other dimensions, we're living in 4 dimensions primarily, but we're beginning to have more and more access to the 5th dimension and the other dimensions that are higher. And he says that it's the magnetic property of the electromagnetic field that appears to tap into the 5th dimension and the higher dimensions where there is non-locality, space is no longer an issue, and no time. So you can, you can basically work with the future and the past, and I could do healing on someone in Hong Kong, and everything is sort of happening simultaneously. There's a circular sense of time there, and so
that's really advanced stuff.
So he's saying that he's saying that it happens through the heart, that the heart is the lead organ in the body. Intelligence-wise, relating to consciousness and intelligence, and we know now that that the heart does indeed have, it has cells that are like the ones in the brain.
Well, I know we talked about that on the telephone. I'd have to see.
But anyway,
what he says. I tend to see the heart as a muscle pumping blood, and the brain and the mind.
But it's also an energy field, you see, and it's this energy field that taps into the 5th dimension and above.
The 5th dimension.
5th dimension.
There was a group that was called.
He's talking about. Well, he's talking about the 5th dimension.
Yeah, right. And it's beginning to be the string theory is beginning to come with the idea that the mathematics show there's other dimensions.
Tiller is saying
other universes.
Tiller is saying that we're evolving, and that the evolution means that we are the evolution of consciousness means that we are becoming more aware of these other dimensions, and that in the future we will be living with more of an awareness of the 5th and upper dimensions, and that these 4 dimensions that we're living in now will be just sort of peripheral. So we will be less conscious, less aware of our physical bodies than of our spiritual bodies.
Oh, that would seem to make some sense, doesn't it, along the line, even if you see things in normal terms of evolution of consciousness. I mean, there was Australopithecine for a few million years, and then Homo habilis, and finally Homo sapien emerged. And there will be a time when we will transcend, and in a punctuated equilibrium sense, like evolution, into another level of, or at least that's the promise of the time in which we live, that we may be at a moment of birthing to a new relationship to the broader evolution of universal consciousness, if such a thing exists within a synergistic material.
So anyway,
universe.
I discovered Reiki when everything just fell to pieces, and I think it was
in your
really
own personal life.
In my own personal life. I learned to do Reiki at the Alex Center here in New York, and I had a wonderful, wonderful teacher whose name is Tarana, and he was an Israeli, and I have to say that what is, and one of the reasons I wanted Rosario here is, it's like Reiki is, there are 3 levels, 3 basic levels of Reiki that that were left to us by Dr. Usui, who was this Japanese man from the 20s.
And if I may, it's in the longer Asian tradition of Confucian or Buddhism
No, no,
or
no, no,
Tao,
no.
or is it standing alone?
It
or?
stands alone.
Okay.
Dr. Usui was a Japanese a man. We don't know that much about him, and it's possible that he wanted it that way because he didn't want a cult to his personality.
Right. Okay, right.
So we don't know that much about him, but we do know that he was a spiritual teacher. And
Japan.
In Japan.
This last century.
In the beginning of last century.
Okay.
And he came out of a Buddhist tradition, which in Japan would be Zen by definition.
Right,
okay. And you know, Zen meditation has to do with being in the now all the time.
Right.
And when you learn Reiki, you realize that Reiki is really very much, in a sense, it's very related to Zen in the sense that Reiki has to do with being in the now, in the present moment.
But it's new in a way.
Well, the method is new,
Yeah,
and
the method,
Dr. Usui, the story goes that he went to Mount Kurama, which is a spiritual mountain that has a monastery, and a lot of people go there to meditate, and they have for many centuries. And that he went there to meditate for 40 days, and he fasted. And he achieved enlightenment in the Buddhist sense of total enlightenment, where you merge with the Godhead or God or
Atma,
universal intelligence or whatever it is you want to call it.
Right.
You merge with that, and you become totally enlightened, and which is what he did. When he came back from this experience, a byproduct of this was that he could heal with his hands. And he began to teach other people to do this. And his idea was to teach as many people as he could how to do this.
The healing.
The healing part.
For the healing power to be there in the person, would they have had to achieve samadhi or
no,
the enlightened state?
This is what's so interesting about Reiki, that
it's sort of democratic.
It's very democratic, because he achieved this ability, and then he began to do an energy transmission. He could actually transmit the energy to you so that you would be the recipient of the same ability that he had. And
Healing ability.
A healing ability.
All
Healing
right.
ability.
Healing thyself, and then others also.
And you start by healing yourself. And this is a book that just came out.
Okay, because I know this Reiki,
in April.
This Reiki is just absolutely galloping into all over the world now. And
It's called Reiki, A Comprehensive Guide, and it's by Pamela Miles. And Pamela Miles is, she has started a number of programs in hospitals, and she teaches Reiki, and she's at, and this book is basically written for the medical community.
Okay, for the medical.
For the medical community, because a lot of the Reiki books until now have been very New Agey, and they talk about, you know.
Well, what about that? Some of the New Age things have some validity
Well,
in
of
the
course they have
scientific
validity,
sense,
but when you're talking to doctors and so on,
they want hard science.
They feel more comfortable when they're talking about science.
Right.
And what she does, and I think she does a very good job here of explaining, because when I started reading this book, I thought, now how is she going to explain the attunements? Because we call them attunements, where attunements, it's sort of an initiation, and I think she uses the word initiation more than attunements. And she explains it, I believe, as being that you become aligned with this frequency of energy frequency through this initiation. And it is true that Reiki is a very specific energy frequency, and there are many different modalities for, you know, doing hands-on healing and so on. And I feel that the Reiki frequency, I can usually recognize when somebody has had, you know, even somebody will tell me, well, I do some other method, and you know, there are a lot of methods, and a lot of people don't say they do Reiki because Reiki is greatly underestimated because it's so easy to learn that people sort of, you know, it's like, you know, when something is very easy to learn and inexpensive, people don't give it any value in the West. We tend to value things that are expensive and take a long time.
And that's definitely the medical model now.
Exactly.
I mean, it's terrible.
So what happens with Reiki is that a lot of people study Reiki, and then they go on and they study these other more complicated modalities, and they never mention that they do Reiki because they sort of think, well, that's just, you know, some little thing.
Some of the other modalities might be just quick.
Well, you know, different kinds of Qigong.
Falun Gong, you got the people being persecuted, something fierce in China that do Falun Gong.
That's not a healing modality per se. That's
well, it comes out of Qigong.
Yeah, but there are different kinds of Qigong. There's the Qigong which you use, to just as an exercise, and then there's the Qigong that you use when you're hands-on touching people and healing them, which they do in the hospital.
Yeah,
and it's not
and
not
that
the same
Eastern
thing.
meditative thing has been looked at with great chagrin by Western acupuncture and that kind of thing. I had a friend who.
And by the way, Qigong takes years and years to learn if you want to use it for healing purposes.
Right, okay.
And you have to go through all kinds of. You have to be celibate for times, and you have to. It's like you have to really live the life of a monk in order to learn that. And
that's a pretty hard road to go.
It's a hard road to go.
Compared to just sort of being able to do it.
So what happens with Reiki is that you can learn it in one weekend. She's a test. You can learn it in one weekend, and if you practice it, of course, if you don't practice it, it's not going to take you anywhere.
Like so many other things in life.
It's like Zen meditation. It's very, very simple, but it takes a lifetime to master.
It takes a lifetime to master. Okay. I'm trying to understand. What do you mean?
Well,
you're going to learn something. What are you going to learn in a weekend if you go to a weekend class?
Well, basically through the attunement. You see, more than what you learn to use the power the alignment the power that you become aligned to.
Is it akin to acupressure, acupuncture?
No,
it's not. It's not. Okay.
Meaning acupuncture.
Because there's a lot to the acupressure. It's now being accepted by the medical community.
But it's not the same thing.
It's not the same thing. It's not. Okay.
I mean, you use needles in that, and you actually put needles in, and you're using the same energy, subtle energies and so on. But it's not. But you're not doing it without. With just your hand.
I had a friend.
You can do everything with Reiki that you can do with acupuncture.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. And it's going along in the same subtle energy
It goes through
field
the same.
And recognizing that as valid, whereas Western science has said that's voodoo.
Yes.
For a long time, and now they're beginning to accept
I actually taught an acupuncturist Reiki, and she said at the end, she said, there isn't anything that I can do with acupuncture that you can't do with Reiki.
Really?
She said, I'm convinced of that.
Really?
No.
Is the medical profession beginning to recognize the Reiki in the United States or
yes,
Western
and
world?
they have it. It's
a great awakening.
And I work in a hospital.
You work at
St. Vincent's Hospital, and I work there twice a week, and I do Reiki, and I do ear acupuncture also. In the interactive stress management clinic, integrative stress management clinic.
That's what they're having in medical establishments all over there. They've got, they call it complementary or integrative or something, and they're beginning to open upon some of these, sometimes it's thought of as Eastern medical practices that have great validity and are beginning to reluctantly on the part of many of the hardwired scientific people who think Western medicine.
Anyway, when you become aligned with this frequency of energy, which, as an individual, which you do because a Reiki master is somebody who's been given the attunements for level 3 Reiki, for the third level.
Okay,
there are 3 levels.
Yeah, there are 3 levels of Reiki mastery. Is that right?
No, there are 3 levels of Reiki. The third one is at the third level you are a Reiki master.
What's the first, second?
It's just level 1 and level 2 and level 3.
Level 3, you become a master.
Then you're called a Reiki master in the West.
Like you are a Reiki master.
I'm a Reiki master.
Yeah, of a certain branch of Reiki. Are there different branches?
There are different branches of Reiki, but it's all the same energy. It's the same Reiki energy. I can recognize it, and that's what I was going to say. That a lot of other practitioners of other methods, I recognize the Reiki when they're working, and I ask them. I say, have you studied Reiki? And they invariably say yes. Yes, I did do, but it's sort of like they dismiss it as if it's not anything important. And what my theory is that, it's the Reiki energy that's boosting their whole ability to do whatever it is.
Something else.
Something else.
So it's like grounding, basic principles.
I believe that
are very important. You've always been like that. You've always found something that's really relevant to something and understanding things in a way. And it seems to me you've done that now in this realm of Reiki, as you've done with the political realm.
In the 1920s.
For a long career, yeah. And art. You've also had art. And so forth.
In the 1920s, especially we didn't have any of these subtle energy methodologies from the Orient in this country at all yet.
They had them there.
They had them in the Orient.
Period,
it's like, and they had all these things like the Qigong and all of these esoteric, healing methods. And,
Right, for
and they had
centuries,
acupuncture
yeah.
for centuries in China
Yeah,
and
right.
Japan and India and so
And
on.
there's a great validity there.
But all of these methods took a long time to learn, and people had to have masters, and they had to pay their dues, and and then there were families that kept like Tai Chi and so on. They kept these different schools, sort of only for their own family. And the one thing that we have that we have an interview that Dr. Usui gave to someone, and he says in the early 20s, he says, Reiki is something that is unique. He said, I haven't found it anywhere else. He said, but he said, I want it to get out there to the people. He said, I don't subscribe to this tradition of people keeping these methods in families in order to give that family prestige and so on. He said, I want it to get out there.
Didn't want a cartel.
No, he did not want a
And
cartel.
he didn't want it exploited for material gain.
No. And what he would do
He
is
doesn't sit accord well with the medical profession in this
No,
country.
no.
They've got a cartel as tight as
and,
OPEC.
and interestingly,
on health
one
and,
of his because he only lived 4 years after he achieved enlightenment and was teaching the Reiki, but he taught a few thousand people Reiki, and he would go into a family, say where there was somebody who was very sick, somebody who had polio,
like Rosario.
like Rosario.
Yeah.
He would go into the family and he would teach the brothers and the sisters and the parents and the grandparents and the children or whatever. He would teach them all to do Reiki, and he would teach her to do Reiki on herself, so that there would be a total immersion of this Reiki, and she would be receiving it all the time, and then there would be these miraculous recoveries.
Now, tell us, what happens when they do
But let me
Reiki? And let's
finish-
try
let
it.
me-
We're going to
let me-
bring her on
but
to
let me
Rosario
finish-
because she's sitting
let
here.
me
We've got to
finish
tell
what
her
I'm
about
saying.
Yeah, okay,
Let me
go ahead.
finish
Yeah,
what
you
I'm
lay
saying.
it out. That's
Yeah,
good.
meaning I want to lay
I
this out
understand,
first. So Dr. Usui was only alive for 4 years, and one of his students was a medical doctor who was a retired naval officer,
Western, yeah.
Dr. Chujiro Hayashi, in the Western medical tradition. And when he learned Reiki, he gave up his medical practice, and
Really?
he opened up a clinic, a Reiki clinic, which became rather well known
And where?
in Tokyo.
In Tokyo?
In Tokyo. And he only used Reiki on people, and he trained people, and everybody did Reiki, and there were these incredibly
What does
miraculous
it mean
cures.
when you say do Reiki? What
When you do
happens when
Reiki,
you
it's
do
like,
Reiki?
well, if you were doing, there's clinical Reiki. In clinical Reiki, you would actually lie down on a massage table, and I would, do like, say, a 1.5 hour, 2 hour session on you, where I would start, at your head, and I would, with my hands, I would be feeling where the energy, connects with your energy, and where my hands begin to pulse, and where they feel hot, and where sometimes they would tingle, sometimes they would, feel cold. And I would actually be balancing your energy, and that's sort of the
Balancing
best,
the energy
the best
and
way
the-
we can explain it.
And it's a subtle energy?
It's a
the
subtle
thing you
energy.
feel in your hand?
What I do is I breathe in the light through the
Yeah.
crown of my head,
Breathe in light through the crown?
Through the crown of my
Okay,
head.
yeah.
and then I breathe it out through my hands. I breathe out the light through my hands. And what happens is that the light goes into your spine, and then it comes out through your heart, and the heart is what transforms it into healing energy. It's the heart in the system of chakras, which most
Yeah,
people are familiar with,
Vedic, yeah.
which comes
Yeah.
from India, and
Yeah.
that's sort of the way we speak about it now. The heart chakra is the chakra of love and compassion, healing.
We could use a bit of that in the world now, don't you, a political
Well,
reality?
when you
and-
do Reiki,
Yeah.
the energy goes through the heart chakra, because it goes through the heart chakra in order to come out down the arms and out through the hands. And of course,
Okay.
what William Tiller is saying
Yes.
is that the heart chakra, this subtle heart here, is what connects through the organ to these healing dimensions, to the 5th dimension and above. And one of the things that he says that's very interesting is he says that when you're working with the 5th dimension, you cannot create negativity, because it's the dimension of unconditional love. This is a scientist saying this.
It's a hardcore material
The
science.
hardcore material.
And quantum mechanics and all of that. Yeah, right. And a leading person
Yeah.
in the structure of the Stanford
Yeah.
University, no less,
Yeah, yeah.
right there in the middle of Silicon Valley.
And this
Talking
is
to-
the conclusion that he has come to.
Yeah.
So it's very important for the energy to go through the heart, because that's what transforms it into this unconditional, positive energy.
Okay.
Which means that when you're doing Reiki, when you're channeling, you're basically channeling this energy from the cosmos, from God. From
Yeah, I have a little hard time, you
whatever,
understand,
you know.
getting this thing about light coming through your head because I just see it as a bone, and you know,
Well, what
but-
you visualize, you see what they've discovered, what you visualize is what moves the subtle energies. That's how you move them, is through visualization.
The visualization is done through the brain.
Yeah.
the mind.
Well, no, it's not done through the mind. It's
Oh.
done through the heart.
Okay,
And you
okay.
can also do it through, but if you want to do healing, it should come through the heart.
Okay, now healing,
Okay.
and then you can do this, and we got that. Poor Rosario is here. And
So
she-
anyway, so
okay.
you do these attunements on
Welcome
someone.
to the program, and
The
we're going to get
attunements-
to you, dear.
All
Yeah.
of the attunements we have come down through from Dr. Usui to Dr. Hayashi, who was the
Okay,
medical
in
doctor
Tokyo, yeah.
who gave up medicine and did only Reiki.
Yeah, and is it spread?
And then it spread
It's
through.
spreading like crazy.
It
now, I
spread.
understand, yeah.
There was one woman from Hawaii. She was a Japanese American, and she went to study with him, and she brought it back to the West after World War II.
To Hawaii.
To Hawaii and to all of the United
Okay,
States, and
yeah.
it spread. We've got millions of practitioners in the world now.
Millions?
Yes.
Really?
And for many years over here, we believed that it had died out in Japan, and now we find that actually Reiki continued in Japan. But in Japan, it was done, the original association that Dr. Usui created still exists, but they're pretty secretive. They won't talk to foreigners, and they don't share it with everyone. You know, I have a Japanese teacher over there who's a monk, and he teaches Komyo Reiki. Is
That's
his
the fellow
variety.
you had a session with in North Carolina.
In North
I remember
Carolina,
that was
yes.
a big event.
I have
yeah.
these photographs.
Do you have
here.
a picture?
Yeah.
Maybe we could. Maybe it's going to be a little tricky.
These are
but
very
maybe
interesting photographs.
This is your teacher, right?
This is my teacher.
Does she know him?
No.
No.
Now in
Now, I'm going to
Japan,
hold this up. It'll take him a while to come in.
in
but this is
Japan,
the
the
man,
lineage,
yeah.
the lineage is considered to be far more important than it is here. And Hyakuta Minamoto is a Japanese monk, a Buddhist monk, and he teaches. He is one of only 2 Japanese teachers who come through a strictly Japanese lineage that goes back to Dr. Usui, who teach foreigners. There are other Japanese practitioners, but none of them will teach foreigners. And then most
None of them will teach foreign.
no, and then most Japanese practitioners have been trained in the West also, or got their got their
Maybe
lineage
through that woman that came in through
through
Hawaii.
that woman, yes, because even they didn't know that.
But this is the
that
real
this
thing.
this is the real
This
thing.
is
Yeah,
the chateau.
it's all the real thing because
Yeah.
the Japanese practitioners say that the Western way of doing it is equally effective.
Okay. Well, that's he. And then this is you with him.
Can they get to the
yeah,
other photograph?
the other one was on the side. What do you want?
Well, I wanted
Okay.
to show these photographs. Of
Okay,
how
here are some photographs she wants to show of this gentleman. This was in North Carolina.
at the end of the day of
Wait,
the
you have
class,
to give it a chance. Oh, there it
he
is.
was he was picking up his things, and I was just taking these photographs, and
Yeah.
they're in chronological order. And
You're
he
going
was
to bring it up to me then?
I'm going to bring it up.
Okay.
And then at this point, he takes out a photograph of Dr. Usui and puts it down. And mind you, I couldn't see this when I was taking the photographs. It's only
You were
the
just
photographs.
taking these photographs?
And this begins to get pink. And then in the next photograph, the whole thing becomes pink.
And did it seem pink to you when you were taking the photograph?
No, I couldn't see this. It only came out on the photographs.
I'll
And
be
then it
darned.
turns bright red. And still, the photograph is here, but in the next picture, he has put the photograph away.
Wait a minute, it got bright red like
I just
that,
took a bunch of
and you were
photographs.
taking the photographs of him, and you did not see it
And then
red.
he puts the picture
When you were
away.
taking the photograph,
Let
you
me
did-
finish.
Oh.
Then he puts the picture away,
Yeah.
and then the next picture goes back to being white.
Okay, now how do you explain that?
You see?
Yeah.
And there's no picture there anymore.
Okay.
Well, you know, it's the subtle
And
energy
when you
fields.
took the picture,
don't know
you
what
did
happened.
not see that area
No.
as red.
It was just white. And when I got the pictures back, I saw this, and and I looked at them for a long time, and I don't know, there was something going on with his subtle energy field, but I don't know what.
But he wasn't indicating that when you take that picture and look at it, it's going to be red.
No,
He never said
no.
that or anything. It just happened.
No, it just happened.
You don't think it's something malfunction with the camera?
Could be.
You know, that kind of thing. Anyway,
This is the problem. You see,
Yeah.
when you're working with subtle energies,
Yeah.
it's very difficult for us to be able to
To know.
To know. You know,
Yeah.
it's like you know on one level, but I can't prove it. But there are a lot of other pictures before and after on this roll of film, and this didn't happen with any of them. And I take hundreds of rolls of film.
Now, if you're doing it
every year, I mean, I spend thousands of dollars on photographs, and I've never had this happen anywhere.
Yeah, right.
So, you know, what can I say?
Yeah, right. Okay. Now, listen, I wonder if we could talk, because Rosario's been sitting here very, very patiently listening, and I know she does not speak English well or anything, so it must be pretty stiff. You have to sit there and smile and be there and everything. So why don't we talk, because she was a patient of yours. Why don't we bring her in? And she does not speak English, so you do speak Spanish fluently. So maybe what you could do is talk with her, or I could ask you to share, and you too share her experience vis-a-vis you, because maybe you could lay out her story for the
Why don't
audience.
you ask me, and I'll
Okay, I'll ask you,
translate.
what is the, could she share her experience as far as Reiki is concerned with you? When
Que
did
si
she-
puedes compartir un poco tu experiencia con el Reiki, con tu enfermedad.
Por favor.
Con mucho gusto.
Ajá.
Bueno, sí, gracias al Reiki yo me he sentido mucho mejor. Empecé un tratamiento de cáncer.
Thanks to the Reiki, she is feeling a lot better. She began a treatment of cancer, for cancer.
Me detectaron en etapa 3B.
They found she was in 3B.
3B.
Stage 3B of cancer. 4 is the last stage, so that's getting to the last stage.
Realmente empecé con un tratamiento de quimioterapia porque mi cáncer era muy agresivo. No tenía muchas probabilidades de vivir.
Yeah, de ver.
Sí.
They started her with chemotherapy because they didn't see many probabilities that she would live because it was very advanced and it was very aggressive cancer.
And she had come here from Ecuador because of the health.
She came here, yes.
Okay,
from
yeah.
Ecuador.
El cáncer el tratamiento no fue como comúnmente lo realizan. En mi caso fue primero la quimioterapia, luego radiación, luego la operación, me hicieron la mastectomía. Luego de eso me tuvieron que realizar nuevamente quimioterapia y radiación a la vez.
She said that her treatment was different from most people because she began with the chemotherapy and then they removed her breast and then they continued with chemotherapy and radiation after that.
And I can remember, could you say to her, I met her at the Museum of Art, the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and she had no hair. And she had just had this treatment, and if I'm not mistaken, she had had prognostications that were not very good in terms of her situation, having gone through that Western medical practice.
Que el pronóstico, habiendo pasado por todo eso, no era muy bueno.
Sí, realmente fue muy triste.
Sí.
Sí, fue muy triste el
Recuerdo.
pronóstico.
I remember talking with her at that meeting, you know, and she was very unhappy and not desperate, but
Gracias a Dios, o sea, después las cosas con ayuda de Nita, el aprendizaje del Reiki me sirvió para poderlo superar.
She said thanks to God and to the help I taught her Reiki basically. She was able to overcome it.
Yeah, but could you please lay it out? She had gone through the medical practice. I don't know if
She had gone through the
radiation,
She had gone through the chemotherapy. When she came up here, the breast was very swollen.
Yeah.
And I met her. She was a patient at St. Vincent's Hospital.
Because you do work there, right?
And I work in the Integrated Stress
Yes,
Management
right,
Clinic.
yeah.
So she was coming twice a week for to get Reiki and ear acupuncture there. And we basically do it for stress management.
Right.
And of course, stress
Yeah, it helps at all levels,
Stress is at the root of all disease.
I think that's
you see.
really true, and
So,
there's a
you
lot
know,
of it in the world now.
Yeah. So, you know, she felt, I remember at the time, she felt that this was helping her a lot.
This was after
During the treatment.
During, okay.
During, yeah. And then she had the breast removed, and they had told her they expected to find a lot that it had spread, but it had not spread. You know, it was concentrated in the breast.
Yeah.
And she felt that was due to the Reiki that she was receiving at the hospital through us.
Entiende or no?
And it's myself and there's another energy healer there, and we were working on her. And at that point,
and she had a bad prognostication, having gone through.
They removed the breast.
Yeah.
And 2 weeks later, the tumors were coming back.
And they told her it looked very grim.
And they couldn't operate anymore.
And that's when I saw her, I believe, at that
that's
meeting
when you saw
at the Metropolitan Museum.
In November,
And she
yeah.
was very sad. And no hair.
so I
Now she looks
so I
grand.
said
And that's very
that
good.
was in November last
Yeah,
year.
that
so
was,
I
yeah.
said, you know, I'm going to teach you Reiki so that
Mhm.
you can do it. It's
Intended.
because
Yeah.
she thought it was helping. I said, I'm going to teach you Reiki. That way you can do it on yourself a lot.
Right.
Because you really need, you know, the thing with Reiki, it's not like waving a magic wand. You
It's
don't
not.
just
No.
do this and say, your knee is healed.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
it's,
yeah.
meaning you really have to work with, you know, with the subtle energy field.
Intended. Okay.
Yeah.
She
Meaning it's, you know, so it's like, my dream is to have a clinic
Yeah.
that would be sort of based on Reiki and also have used sound healing, this Tibetan bowl and so on,
Okay.
and you know, sort of these and herbs. I believe a lot in herbs too. But my dream would be to have a clinic like Dr. Hayashi had.
In Tokyo.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, but I want to have
Why
it
don't
here.
we have Turkey?
I
Don't
wanna
we
have
have?
it here.
Don't we have Turkey? Don't we have the clinics like that in America?
No,
Isn't it
no.
picking up?
No, we don't have a Reiki clinic like
Not
that.
a Reiki, but we have clinics.
There are a
that
lot of
picking up-
alternative care clinics that do
Right.
a lot of different things.
Right.
But for instance, what's interesting to me is that, you know, it's like, if Rosario had known English, she probably would have gotten involved with the whole New Age community, and she would have done a lot of different things.
Right.
So we
there's all
wouldn't.
kinds of things
So
in
we
the
wouldn't
name of
know.
New Age.
We wouldn't know that it
Do
was.
you take exception?
Listen,
Oh,
please
sorry.
listen to me now.
Okay.
We wouldn't know that it was the Reiki that had these results, because that's basically what she did. You
Mhm.
see, and this is what with most people. They do a lot of different things, so you never know in the end what.
Yeah, which one
What,
was-
what in her case, it was really meaning it was the Reiki, because so
That's
the
all she
tumors.
did.
That's all she did. So the
Uh-huh.
tumors were coming back. I taught her level 1 Reiki. This is just level 1 Reiki.
What is that? Okay.
That's the basic level. And you learn it in 1 week.
And you can relate to
and
yourself.
by the way,
yeah.
I want to say that you know I learned Reiki with this wonderful teacher Tirana, and 95% of what I use when I do Reiki on other people and so on is what I learned in level 1. So it's not like you have to keep going on to other levels to
You
for
don't
it
have to
be.
go to Harvard Med.
No, no.
Yeah.
And so Rosario was doing it. It was a total immersion of the Reiki. She was doing it. ¿Cuánto hacías tú al día de Reiki? Háblanos un poco de eso.
Bueno, prácticamente yo lo que realizaba es, qué sé yo, de las 8 horas al día, realizaba por lo menos unas 3 horas, 4 horas.
She would do 3 or 4 hours of Reiki on herself a day.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ya, porque realmente estaba en una condición muy crítica, yo no me podía levantar de la cama,
She was in a very critical situation. She couldn't get out of bed.
Wow.
yo no podía ponerme de pie, necesitaba la ayuda de una
She
persona
couldn't
para que
stand
me...
up without someone helping her.
Is this after I saw her?
After
in
you saw
November?
her, yes.
Right. Okay.
Ujú.
Okay.
Que she-
Go on.
yeah.
Y entonces, en un momento determinado llegó una crisis total, me dio un infarto al corazón.
She had a heart attack at a certain point after you saw her.
Boy.
So there was a total
Eh,
crisis.
Yeah.
Un coágulo al cerebro.
There was an embolism in the brain.
Boy.
She had a stroke. She was totally paralyzed.
Holy
Half of
Toledo.
her body.
Embolia pulmonar.
A clot in the lungs after that.
Estas 3 cosas me dieron en un mes y medio más o menos.
In a period of 6 weeks, she had those three things.
Lots. Difícil.
Realmente fue una situación muy dura.
Mm.
En ese momento, Nita fue que llamó por teléfono cuando empezó la primera crisis y realmente ella me dio las orientaciones para que yo practique la respiración y continúe con el Reiki.
I called her right before the first when she had the stroke and the brain embolism. I called her. I felt that
You were in touch. I remember at that meeting you were really.
I was
yeah.
not. You know, she was saying she's living with a sister out on Staten Island, and you know, basically. We would have conversations in the hallway at the hospital,
Yeah.
you know, just 2 or 3 minute conversations.
Mhm.
And I would always tell her, I just, you know, keep doing the Reiki, because the thing about, you know, when you learn to do something like this and you're doing it on yourself,
Mhm.
you know, you get discouraged, so you need support. You need,
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
and you start thinking,
Sure.
and I know from my own experience, well, you know, why am I wasting my time doing
Right,
this,
right,
and,
right,
like, you know,
right,
and all
right,
this sort of thing, because it's not like a magic wand. It's not like, you know, you're just cured all of a sudden in 1 minute or something. I mean, that could happen,
Yeah.
but it's not. It's not. It's very unusual.
Right.
Meaning it's like meditation, and it
Yeah.
is a form of meditation. It takes a lot of time in doing it. You have to do it.
Mhm.
And so that week I was feeling, you know, I really feel like I should be going out
And seeing Rosario.
And seeing
And
Rosario
she was
and
in
giving,
this dire
giving her
state
a
in-
real session.
She was in
And-
the dire state
No,
in
but
Staten
let me,
Island?
but let me,
Yeah.
and I had never been out there, and I had never given her a whole session
Yeah.
outside the hospital or
Uh-huh.
anything. But I just, that week, and so
You
I
would
called her
give
on
it, yeah.
Friday.
Morphic resonancy.
I called her on Friday and to see how she was, and she told me she couldn't get out of bed or anything.
Yeah.
And I went through the instructions, and I said, Rosario, and she said, I'm just too weak. I can't do the Reiki anymore.
Oh, yeah.
So I said, well, just put your hands on yourself and just keep breathing in the light and breathing out the light through your hands. Just do that.
Breathing in the light and
You
through
know,
the crown of your head
When
and
you've
through
had
the heart to
when
the
you've
hand.
had the attunement, this
Yeah,
works.
The attunement, okay.
You have
right.
to have the attunement in
Right.
order to be able to do Reiki.
Is it a
It's-
mindset?
It's
No.
transmitted. No,
No.
it's an energy attunement,
That's what
a
I'm saying.
subtle
It's
energy
not,
field.
Yeah,
Has to do with the heart,
yeah.
not the mind.
Mm.
So anyway, so I called her in the afternoon, and I just said, I wish I could come out there, but I can't because I have my mother that I go to see every
I
day
know,
and so on.
Helma, yeah.
So I told her that.
Mm.
Entonces yo te dije por teléfono.
Pues sí, me dio las instrucciones de lo que yo debía hacer por teléfono y realmente mi capacidad estaba muy disminuida. Fue mi hermana la que escuchó. El momento en que
Her sister was listening to my
on the
instructions
telephone,
too.
yeah.
el momento en que me da el estrógeno en el cerebro, yo comencé a perder la movilidad de medio cuerpo.
When she had the stroke,
Yeah.
which was the following morning,
right.
6 in the morning, she
Right.
began to lose all
Control,
feeling
yeah,
and
right,
control of the
right,
left
right.
side.
Se me
right.
paraliza el medio
Yeah,
cuerpo,
sí,
yo ya no
me
podía
dio-
respirar,
She couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
yo no podía, ya comencé a perder el habla,
She couldn't speak anymore.
Wow. Uh-huh.
Solamente podía articular palabras incoherentes, pero mi pensamiento estaba muy claro.
Uh-huh.
Entonces,
Her thinking was very clear.
Yeah.
el rostro se me torció
Her face twisted
Yeah.
there.
Uh-huh.
y bueno, y mi hermana...
Muy duro.
Y mi hermana en ese momento me decía, tú solo tienes que respirar,
Yeah.
haz Reiki,
Yeah.
tienes que seguir las instrucciones de tu amiga. Tú
So
tienes
her-
que hacer eso.
Her sister kept saying,
Entonces yo lo único que hacía
Yeah,
es
sí.
tratar de tranquilizarme ese momento. Y bueno, comenzar a hacer Reiki, que ingrese la luz, que la luz vaya por mi cuerpo, que tenga yo sanación. Así logré estar consciente hasta cuando llegaron los paramédicos, vino los de emergencia, me pusieron el respirador, yo ya estaba paralizado medio cuerpo. Cuando ellos tuvieron que sujetarme a una silla, porque yo no podía controlar ya mis movimientos. Entonces llegué al hospital ya con oxígeno, completamente rígida ya la mitad de mi cuerpo.
Maybe you could.
yeah, she was saying that,
Thank you.
when she just started to lose consciousness and
Yeah,
everything, that
yeah.
her sister said to her,
Yeah.
just do what your friend said to
Right,
you. Just
because-
keep breathing in the light and so on. So she did.
Uh-huh.
She started just breathing in the light and just having an intention of healing.
Uh-huh.
And she said then they had to tie her to something because she lost control of her body and she was half paralyzed and she just kept breathing in the light.
Uh-huh. And she did that, and the doctors are telling her that it's a very bad prognostication.
No, wait,
No.
she hadn't finished the story.
Okay. It'd be good.
Bueno,
Yeah.
eso fue más o menos que me duró unas 2 horas.
That was
2
2
horas.
hours.
Mm-hmm.
Cuando yo estaba en el hospital, ya no podía abrir ni siquiera mis ojos.
She couldn't even open her eyes anymore
Right.
in the bed of the hospital.
Únicamente pensaba en el momento en que mi vida se escapaba.
She just knew that her life was leaving her.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Entonces, la única alternativa que tenía era primero tener mi fe en Dios.
Yeah.
She said she
Faith
just
in
kept her
Dios.
faith in God. That was her
Right.
alternative.
Uh-huh.
Y la otra alternativa era mi fe en el Reiki y practicarlo, seguirlo haciendo, respirando,
And the other alternative
pensando que la luz era mi única salvación. Esa luz comenzó a dar fuerzas.
She said the light, she just kept breathing in the light, breathing out the light.
Breathing in the light.
And it began to give her strength. And she was doing the Reiki with it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
At long stretches. And what are the...
She continued.
Is it irrelevant for us to talk about what the medical doctors are saying?
Yeah, but let her finish
All
her
right,
experience.
okay,
Yeah.
fine, yeah. Sí.
En el hospital, luego que comencé a respirar, hubo un momento determinado que yo vi que mi vida se iba.
She said there was a certain moment where she realized that her life was just leaving her.
Ah.
Entonces, yo lo único que hice fue sujetarme de la cama y de la mano de mi hermana.
She grabbed a hold of the bed and her sister's hand.
Y lo único que le pedía a ella, le decía, no me dejes ir.
And she said, don't let me go, to her sister.
To her sister.
Mm-hmm.
Su hermana.
No me dejes ir. Yo no me puedo ir sin mis hijos.
She said, I can't leave without my children, my sons.
Yeah.
Y respiraba y trataba de
And I just kept
tranquilizarme.
Right.
Y
Sí.
en ese momento yo vi abrirse una puerta.
At that moment, she saw a door open.
Yo no pude ver la cara de quién fue.
She couldn't see the face.
Solo vi de los pies hasta más o menos el pecho.
She saw this part of the person standing there.
Era una puerta que me invitaba a pasar.
It was a door that invited her to come through, to step through.
Dije, yo no voy sin mis hijos.
She said, I'm not going without my sons.
I've seen pictures of her son.
Y en ese momento me vino una fuerza así muy grande.
She received a lot of strength. She felt a lot of strength.
Yo regresé a mirar y de pronto abrí los ojos.
She was able to open her eyes.
Yeah, right.
Cuando abro los ojos, yo me sonrío porque veo un pastel. O sea, yo miraba un pastel en el cual se levantaba unos números. Eran 2 números 7 que se levantaban así.
She opened her eyes and she smiled because she saw a cake. And 2 number 7 just sort of came up out of the cake.
A cake?
Yo digo,
What did you say, cake?
A birthday cake.
No, how do you say cake in Spanish?
Pastel.
Pastel, ¿ya? Con 7.
Sí, entonces yo sonreí y abrí mis ojos y miraba y quería ver dónde estaba el pastel. Y la interpretación que yo tengo es que yo pregunté, ¿voy a vivir 77 años?
Yeah! Let the audience know that. It says to her she's going to live 77 maybe.
Pienso que Dios me va a permitir esa dicha.
Pero, and can we talk now about what the medical people
Cuando se abrió la puerta, sentiste una luz.
Sí.
Is this como a new death experience, like a death?
But wait, because when the door opened, eso como fue.
El momento en que se abrió la puerta, entonces la persona que estaba ahí y el resplandor que me vino, pero así toda la luz, toda una luz.
White light?
Blanca?
Al inicio blanca, pero luego se torna en azul, en violeta, pero todo mi cuerpo.
She said that this light just came out and just
How was she feeling? What was she feeling? What was she thinking as this happened? What was her state of mind?
¿Qué pensabas cuando esto pasó?
At this momento.
En ese momento yo pensé, o sea, esa es mi fuerza, la fuerza que me está dando.
So that's the strength that's coming, to her.
Era únicamente que yo pensaba que tenía ya fuerza y pude abrir mis ojos.
So that's what she felt, that it was strength coming to her.
Yeah, right. Isn't that something else? When was it? Okay.
Yo lo que puedo concluir es que si bien hay medicina alternativa, pero el Reiki es una alternativa de vida.
She said this, that there is alternative medicine, but that she feels that Reiki is an alternative for life.
Well, you feel the same. It's really an important idea that has huge implications.
And it's very
Bueno. and
She
now
did
she's
this
feeling well. She's
just-
feeling great.
Just one weekend
Yeah.
of Reiki 1, level 1 workshop she had, and she was able to do this.
And
we
during-
all are.
And
We all are.
when she was going through this, the medical doctors, after she went through the medical practices, were telling her that it looks really grim, dear. You get ready to meet your maker, that it's gone. What was the medical profession
¿Qué te
saying to
estaban
her?
diciendo los médicos en ese momento?
No, los médicos me tenían en observación, pasé 21 días en cuidados intensivos.
She was 21 days in intensive
21
care.
days. And what are they saying to her? What
Y
was
no-
their
y-
prognostication?
y ¿a cuántos días ya no tenías nada de
Y bueno,
She was totally paralyzed.
Yeah,
Yes.
right. and all this other
parálisis,
stuff. So what are they saying to
regresó,
themselves?
yo comencé al tercer día, ya me pude poner de
She said
pie.
she could already stand up on the third day.
Yeah, right,
And she was, estabas haciendo Reiki.
Y-
so
Sí,
she didn't-
siempre, o
she
sea,
could
hacía
stand up,
Reiki,
that's
porque yo era fija en la cama, inmóvil.
She was immobilized in the bed, and she just kept
With
doing
the
Reiki.
stroke.
Entonces, ya por la noche le digo a mi hermana, ayúdame a mover los dedos de los pies, porque yo ya sentía que la luz estaba allá.
She could feel the light going in, and she would ask her sister to help her move her toes.
Que me mueva los dedos, luego la pierna,
Sí, sí.
luego todo, así poco a poco.
Yeah,
by
sí.
little.
Al tercer día me pude poner de pie.
She could stand up by the third day.
Okay.
Pero
And this
yo no
is-
podía
yeah.
caminar porque me caía.
She couldn't walk yet.
Is this the result of the things that the doctors did
No,
for
no,
her,
this
that
is the
she made a
Reiki.
recovery from and good old chemotherapy and all that kind of stuff kicked in and she
No,
recovered?
this is
Or
a
was
stroke.
there something
This is a
unique
stroke where
to the
people...
Reiki? Does she think it was something unique, Reiki,
Sí, ¿qué piensas
that
que
made
fue
this possible? Or was it the
una cosa
result of the
única de
medical
Reiki o de lo que
practices
estaban
that the
haciendo
good
los
doctors of
médicos?
Mount Sinai had
No,
performed?
ellos no me daban medicina.
They weren't giving her anything.
No.
Qué bueno. Y,
No,
y
no me
ahorita-
daba medicina porque ellos consideraban que estaba en el proceso y que yo no podía, a más de una aspirina de 81 miligramos que dan para un bebé,
Only baby aspirin.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
no podía yo tomar.
Está como miraculo. Or how do you say? Like a miracle.
Como milagro.
¿Cómo? Está muy importante
¿Y a los
para
cuántos
tú
días ya no
y
tenías
para
nada
otro.
de...
Ya.
Lástima, tenemos solamente un minuto más. Pero este Reiki está muy importante, and she can testify, and you can testify also, and people should become aware of this. Is that something that she would subscribe to? We only have a minute left, so let's
And
wrap
appreciate
it up and
that
let people
we
know.
have something here that is so simple, and it should not be underestimated because it's simple and inexpensive. You know, and it's permeating the whole field of energy healing.
It is.
In my estimation, the reason that energy healing is taking on and so on is because the Reiki has created this morphic field.
Well, it may be,
You
it
know,
may be
it's a
in the
ground for
political material realm of political and all that. Real, honest to God, political and economic democracy may be making its way into the human society for the first time in 200,000 years, and it may be at this democratic kind of approach to healing and working at higher
Democratic, yeah.
dimensions is also, its time is coming.
So that's what
so
I
it's
love.
very
See, I love
important
teaching.
in this case.
I love,
Entiende?
for me, you see, this is so much.
This makes it all
more wonderful.
worthwhile, don't
Yeah,
it? Yeah,
because you know, if I had been the one doing the Reiki on her and she'd recover, you know, it's not the same satisfaction as teaching someone to do it themselves.
Yeah,
I
but
mean,
you
it's-
see, that
you see, this is what's
yeah,
so
but that's
wonderful.
an attitude that is democratic in the full.
Yeah.
That's bodhisattva.
Because I don't want
that's
people to-
bodhisattva.
I don't want-
That's
I don't want-
democratic in the
I don't
full
want-
sense of the word.
I don't want-
and that does not inform the political process
I don't want
operating this
patients
planet.
that are going to depend on me to be
I
giving
know.
them Reiki.
Well, you
It's
see,
like,
you've got the
you know,
right
I-
frame